Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday afternoon. It is Talking Away the Taboo. We are bringing you this special session of our Insta Live program where we're going to be discussing endometriosis, really just living with endometriosis, with two really powerful and beautiful stories coming from Leah and Michaela. I'm just waiting for them to join right now. Look, I think all of you know that as part of I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, what we do is we talk about different medical diagnoses, we talk about different um, mental illnesses, physical illnesses, all different kinds of things that impact people in terms of their wanting to build a family. And we come at this and we do this from the emotional aspect. And so that's really what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do the physical pieces and we're going to talk about the diagnosis, but we're going to talk about how you live with it. So let me just grab everybody here. Okay. And Michaela should be here shortly. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Michaela or Leah, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Here's Leah. Michaela should be here any second. So please feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get started in a second. Leah, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Introduce yourselves. Tell people who you are.
Okay, hi, I'm Leah. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm originally from London, and I have endometriosis.
Hi. Okay, thank you. I know that it's always difficult to come and talk about things for the first time, and I know that both of you, Michaela, I'm so grateful to the two of you, both of you. But both of you do this in a really powerful way on your own platforms and your own handles. But to come here together today, I think is incredibly brave and wonderful. So thank you. Michaela, introduce yourself.
Thank you for having us. I'm Michaela. I am from Manchester, UK. I'm 29 years old now. I have endometriosis.
Okay. All right. So let's get right into it. I think, the first piece we want to do is talk about the diagnosis itself, how each of you were diagnosed, and, how like that sort of trip down memory lane and like the different pieces that you went through. So, Leah, I'm going to ask you first if you can tell us a little bit about your story from that perspective.
Okay, so my symptoms started when I was around 13 or 14, as I started having periods. Um, at first, they were not very often, regularly irregular, actually, but each time very, very heavy, painful. Sometimes I missed school, sometimes I fainted. As the years went on, especially once I was in seminary, actually, my periods became a lot heavier. Once again, I was missing classes. Um, I started having difficulty walking, um, started walking with a slight limp during my period, and terrible coughs as well that were kind of connected also. Um, and then I was eventually diagnosed 3 years ago in 2018 when I had my first surgery for endometriosis, where it was removed from 3 or 4 different areas in my pelvis.
And what, like, just like talk us through, like, you were having these painful periods and then they even got more painful, and then like there were other physical manifestations. Like, what were the doctors saying? Like, what was your family saying? What was going through your head? What what was that like? What was going on?
I have to say it was very confusing, especially as a teenager, and I did see doctors. I was often told, it's normal, you're a teenager. Sometimes periods start off very difficult, or, maybe as they regulate and as you get a little bit older, they will even out. But for me, it was the case of actually it getting worse. I did have scans at some point, it didn't show anything, but as I've now learned, endometriosis does not show on scans. So a scan that looks 100% normal, a negative scan that's actually looking for something, doesn't actually mean that everything is okay. I was also constantly told, as I got a little bit older, that it was all in my head, that I was over exaggerating, that I was a depressed teenager and then young adult. And it actually took to me being married and I guess a few months into being married, and I went with my husband to an appointment, and he was sharing just how much it was impacting my life. And it was almost like it took hearing it from another person's perspective, for someone who lived with me, and hearing it from him as well, for me to be taken seriously. I do have to say that when I got married, I did move to the US. Um, so I was going from one medical system to
Right.
another one. In England, everything is NHS based. You don't choose your doctors and everything. Whereas in America, I've been blessed to be able to actually shop around for doctors and choose the actual doctors that I am seeing. Whereas in England, you were kind of referred to a hospital's GYN team, and you see whoever's on call that day.
Right, which I'm sure led to a lot of the confusion and the misdiagnoses and all of that. Okay, Michaela, I mean, similar for you, different for
Um,
you.
I,
I could,
I got a
yes.
misdiagnosis along the way. My period started, my symptoms started when my first period at the age of 12, but what I actually didn't remember until didn't realize was a symptom is as a child, I was always constipated, and my bowel was very badly affected from earlier on as well. So because of my age, and again, they were like, you know, if it's your first start periods, it's probably going to be painful. I was under gastro for many years, and I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And I mean, to this day, we don't know if it was a misdiagnosis or not, because once I was there and they found out what was wrong, they tend to struggle with multiple diagnoses. So I was in and out of gastro wards for years, and it wasn't until I was 17 that I was even sent to a gynae for actual. I had had a scan just by my regular GP, which I don't know how it works there, but the practitioner, and it came back as polycystic ovaries, but nothing that explained.
Say that again. It came back as
So
positive for
as polycystic ovaries, so I did have
polycystic.
PCOS,
Yep.
but you know, explain all the symptoms. So you know, I was put on contraception at a young age to try and deal with the period pain. But I first was diagnosed with Crohn's, and then when I was 18, that was when I actually just had the surgery, and they found out that it was endometriosis, not Crohn's. But I had to leave school at 15 because I was fainting in school every month. I was missing too much school, and then I ended up just taking my GCSEs from home and never being able to go back into education.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, you know, both of you, get this diagnosis, and you're still, reeling with the symptoms, obviously. I mean, both of you ended up with surgeries, which, we can talk about, but how do each of you approach then, like, thinking about getting married? I mean, Leah, you spoke about a little bit about your husband previously, but like, how do you approach thinking about getting married? What did people tell you in regard to your fertility in general, whether it would affect your fertility, whether it wouldn't affect your fertility? Like, walk us through some of that thought process in your head, and what the medical community was telling you about that. Michaela, I'm going to go to you first.
Okay, so I mean, I was engaged already when I got my diagnosis. My husband, obviously, he knew I wasn't well, and he's a carer, so he's very caring by nature. And I remember when we started dating, I kept saying to him, like, we don't know what's wrong, but you know, it's clearly I'm not easy to be with. Like, you don't want to be with me. And he was like, no, I do, which was very sweet. You know, when things get difficult, I say to him, I did warn you, like, I warned you. And he's like, you can't hold that against me forever. But yeah, so then what was difficult was when I got my diagnosis. Yeah, people were not happy that we were engaged. My husband's one of 10 and comes from a more orthodox family, and my family were about to shove us. So my parents were more open-minded, and it was difficult because there were people that just said to him, it's just not a good idea. And that was really hard. I was 18 and I had just got this diagnosis, and now people didn't even want me to marry. I mean, he helped me fight for my diagnosis, and it was very difficult. You know, you just, to not feel good enough because of something you're not in control. I think if it's something you're in control of, then, you know, maybe there's something you can do. But
Right.
when it's something like your health that you're not in control of, it's really, it's hard to explain how awful you feel.
So what you're saying is that people, like people from the outside were basically putting this like limitation and saying like, oh, this is going to be terrible, and like, you know,
Yeah.
you shouldn't get married because you're not going to be able to have a large family, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Like it wasn't the like the doctors that were saying that per se. It was more that the people.
Yeah. Well, his boss at the time was all actually his boss was a retired GP, and she was part of the community. And she said it in a kind and caring way, but she said to him like, "Are you sure? It's not the best idea for a Jewish boy like you." So that was coming from both point of views. I mean, I never spoke about it much with my doctors, but I kind of, they didn't really even understand why I was getting married so young. They didn't even understand our world. So
Right. And how did you feel about knowing that, like, we all talk about like these, like, when we're little and we're all playing, in the playground, and like, oh, I want to have 3 kids. Oh, I want to have 12 kids. Oh, like, we all have, right, these dreams about what we think our future family is going to look like. How did that, getting the diagnosis, affect you and what you thought, would happen for you?
it was really hard because when I first got the diagnosis, I didn't know as much as I knew now. So I knew it could affect fertility. I didn't understand the extent of it, and I also knew I was young, and that gave me more of a chance. I was scared, but it's funny because what you're saying is about this dream of having your perfect family. It's something that I've learned more. I'm sure we'll talk about our journeys, but I have realized lately that if a woman can struggle from secondary infertility and she can still have those problems, she can feel so blessed that she has that one child. But growing up with this dream, you draw the pictures of how many kids you want, and you have this dream, and it doesn't matter, how many kids you have, you're still mourning the loss of whatever that dream was.
Right.
But I think it was just, at the time I was 18 and I was so young and I'm thinking back to how I reacted from it, and I think I just found it hard to actually understand what it meant. So I kind of went with it, and I was like, you know what, I'm marrying this person that trusts that it's going to be okay, and I feel safe with him, and together we'll make it okay. And that's how we took it every step of the way, because it was so much unknown as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, we're going to come back to that, but I want to give Leah a chance to comment here as well. Talk to us about, what you were thinking about as you were going through this and the diagnosis and thinking about your future life.
Well, having been told for a while that it was nothing, when I was dating, it wasn't actually something I brought up. I did bring up, I do sometimes have stomach pains. I sometimes have back pain. But I didn't have a name for it. And I was constantly told that, it was nothing and it shouldn't impact me and there's no reason to be in pain. So yes, I brought it up, but it wasn't something, kind of the severity of it just didn't get into play until you're really like living with a person. I mean, I remember in seminary, we were in an apartment with 5 girls, and when I was on my period, everyone seemed to know because I was just in so much pain. I sometimes couldn't move. My friends bring me my boot to my room. I often missed class. When everyone else had a period, the only sign was the wrappers in the garbage can. Like,
Right.
that was it.
Right.
When we did get married, also, it was I never really had a clear cut in my head. I want X amount of kids or something. And by the time I was diagnosed, I'd already been going through chronic pain for around 9, 10 years. So it was scary, it was confusing, but it was a huge relief to have a name for it, to have a to know where the source of pain was coming from, to know that I wasn't a hypochondriac, it wasn't all in my head, that this was actually something real and something that was removed from me. But then you also know that there is no cure. Um, Shortly after my first surgery, about 3 months later, I was pregnant. I had a miscarriage, Thanksgiving 2018, so anniversary coming up.
I'm sorry.
Uh, that was really difficult because I'd heard all these things about fertility and I didn't know how it would be like for me. So on the one hand, it was a relief. Okay, I was able to get pregnant. And on the other hand, it was something, oh, why did it happen? And then was it just taken away from me so soon? I found out on a Monday and I was in the ER starting miscarrying on the Thursday. It actually took about 2 weeks to actually empty out. And after that, I didn't stop bleeding and spotting for about 3 months afterwards, after which the only option was to go on birth control, not for the purpose of birth control, but because it was getting dangerous for me to be losing the amount of blood that I was losing every day. And the birth control was what has kept me somewhat healthy, but I say it like in a the birth control doesn't take away the symptoms. So, I wasn't bleeding every day, or Hashem, that was something, but I was still dealing with all the other symptoms on a daily basis. The daily pain was maybe a little bit less, but there was still this daily challenge and struggle to get through.
Yeah, I mean, you're leading me basically right into my next question, which is like, how have each of you been able to manage the emotional aspects of all of this, and the knowing that you have a chronic illness, knowing that it's something that does not have a cure, knowing that you have to do certain things in order to keep it at bay, and then obviously all of the physical symptoms that go along with everything that this diagnosis entails. So like I hear, and like I really appreciate what you were saying, Leah, about the fact that this getting the diagnosis was such a relief. Like, it was finally almost like, you weren't being gaslighted anymore. You weren't like, people couldn't tell you, oh no, it's all in your head. Like, you can say, like, here it is. It's like, here's the paper. It's right here. I actually have this. But then there's still all of the rest of it, right? So, talk to us, Leah, a little bit about how you manage. Like, how do you cope with a diagnosis like this?
Therapy. Number one, therapy. I started seeing a therapist probably late 2017. And since then, I have been seeing one basically every week. I've seen a few different ones. The most recent therapist was actually a trauma therapist. to help me get through a lot of the medical trauma that came from the medical gaslighting and the trauma of my miscarriage, of the constant bleeding. That and constant tools that I found have helped me. Hot water bottles, constantly using them, sometimes two at a time. I actually have at the end of my bed, on a little dresser, there are 3 hot water bottles, 2 like rice heat things that I bought in England the last time I was there. They have Velcro attachments, so I can actually wear them and do something, and like a wrap thing that, you know, goes around my neck. I use a CBD cream that I find when I use it topically, it does kind of take the edge off. Exploring my hobbies is something that does really help. When I was recently bedbound back in June, I found that I was actually able to do embroidery in bed, lying down. That was something, for me, it was a relief to be able to do something that I enjoyed, that I found that I could do something lying down, instead of feeling that, you know, when I'm lying in bed, I'm wasting time and not doing what I should be doing. You know, just finding little things to bring joy, because it can be a lot. There's so many appointments. Physical therapy, powerful physical therapy has been a huge help, helping to strengthen those muscles that have weakened, helping to loosen the muscles that are automatically tightening every time there's a spasm and a pain, helping with my mobility, walking, sitting for long amounts of time, different things that I'd say I used to take for granted, or things that you expect you'll be able to do like a regular person, eating a meal without having dietary restrictions because of how your stomach's going to react, or whether you're going to be able to actually digest it. But finding the coping skills and the different things, little things that help, my family, close friends, my husband, different people along the way. You also helped to put the word out for the Endo Sisters WhatsApp group, which is where I met Michaela, and other women. And the camaraderie that we have on this group, we support each other through the lows and we celebrate each other's wins, even the little tiny ones. Today I managed to walk around the block.
Amazing.
Today I kept my foot down. All these little things, just knowing that you're not alone. And obviously at the same time, it is really sad to see and witness how many of us there are suffering so much on a daily basis.
Right. Look, we know, I mean, we know because of, you know, the work here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, we know that there is true power in community. There is power in really having this sense of camaraderie. Like, no one else wants to put any of your suffering on anyone else, right? Like, none of us would wish any of our pain on anyone, but to know that there's actually someone out there who gets it is huge in a million ways, is huge. Michaela, how have you been handling the emotional aspects of dealing with a chronic illness and dealing with chronic pain?
It's difficult. I probably lived in denial for a long time. You know, it has no cure, but I mean, it's been about 10 years since my diagnosis, and when I speak, it's always like when I get better and when I do this. And it probably wasn't until after I had to have a hysterectomy in January, and it was an emergency hysterectomy. I didn't want it. And it wasn't until after that when I guess I got over my denial, and I've suffered. My mental health has hugely suffered, which again, you know, affects a marriage and, well, all relationships. But you know, that's another, to suffer from your mental health as well as your physical health. They come hand in hand. But you know, the harder you have to fight for help as well, the more that affects your mental health, the more you're stuck at home. I just feel that so often it's like I'm living in a different universe to other people. I found it so hard to relate to my peers, and that's how I actually started my account, because I was losing friends and nobody was understanding what I was going through. And I began blogging my story and what I was going through, and the writing was so therapeutic and it helped me so much. And then I started to connect with other women, and like that was a massive bonus, and like meeting all these other women with endometriosis, because you know, again, I was 18 when I was diagnosed. I was younger, and you don't know there's a whole world out there. And
Right.
now, and sometimes it's so heartbreaking. I just have to literally not actually go on social media for a bit, because I'm like, I say to my husband, do you know how many messages I have from women that are the same story? Like, you wouldn't believe it. But I think it's talking about my feelings and writing about my feelings is what got me through, and having the right emotional support and therapy. But it's not something I'm still learning. I don't know if you ever learn to like handle it, to be okay with it, to accept it. Some days I'll just break down and I'll cry, and it will be like I've just found out I've had my diagnosis, and that, not to say dramatic, but that distraught, because it doesn't matter how, when they told you or when you got your diagnosis, or it's still there and it's still with you, and it's just so hard to live with. It's hard to manage, it's hard to live with. And then the WhatsApp group has been great as well.
Look, I mean, it's the reason why, you know, I felt very strongly about, you know, wanting to do this and wanting to bring the two of you here to talk about this, is because of so many of the things that the two of you have said, but just this aspect of people really not understanding. And I think social media like perpetuates that, right? Because we all know that social media, like, you get like our best, the best, right? You get the best of the best. Like, you can blog about feeling like you're in pain, but you only have the energy to talk about when you were in pain on your good days. You can't do it on your bad days.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, and this, like, this discussion of like, I'm talking to you from my bed now, and you know, I'm really like, it doesn't. Yeah. It's go ahead. I'm interrupting you.
No, it's hard. I actually like wrote a few weeks ago about how it's so hard, because you come on social media and you have all these influencers and everyone who always so glam and so made up, and it's like, on a rare occasion will look like that and will snap as many photos to use, but you I mean, I don't know if I can talk on behalf of Leah, but like, it's so rare you'll see me all dressed up like that. And it's hard, because that's what attracts people, is that glamour and that lifestyle. Now, I don't want to attract people because I want to say, look at me and look at my lifestyle, because you'll be bored, because the site's literally like my bedroom window, and me being like, I'm losing my mind. But it's because I want to share the knowledge. But then it's hard because we don't have those pretty pictures and the glamorous lifestyle, and it makes you, you know, it's hard when you feel insecure already. And this is something that I've thought so many times about. Should I shut down my page? Because I know I'm not competing, but it often might feel that way because, especially with Instagram, it's the picture that gets the attention. What picture can I show you? You know, I've got scars, I'm covered in, I can't even look at my body. I don't think you're going to want to look at my body. I mean, I wouldn't put that out there anyway.
Right.
In a world where it's you know, the first 10 seconds, or it's that you got to capture your audience's attention with just a photo or something, it's hard. We can't go out and make these amazing videos and do this. Like, we do what we can, and it's hard.
Yeah. Leah, your thoughts about social media and this, you know, these pieces that Michaela is bringing up?
It doesn't show everything, you know. Although I do share some hard moments, that's not everything. And honestly, when I have the energy to post it, is often a good-ish sort of day. I'm rarely posting when I'm in those, you know, kind of really difficult moments, which is almost when you need the most support. Um, in those sorts of times, I'm not posting anything. I'm more reaching out to our Endo Sisters WhatsApp group for that support, because on there,
They get it.
I'm able to be vulnerable on myself and they get it. And I'm not getting questions asking what I mean, or
Right.
can't I do something different,
Right.
or
Right.
um,
I think that, you know, like what people are saying, there are a couple of comments here, which I think is directly related to this. You know, people are saying here that losing friends because of sharing this, or is a very common feeling that people have also with infertility and miscarriage. This person is saying she feels that after she shares a diagnosis, that's when people pull away, which is, we know, so common with all of this. And
yeah,
and then she's also saying that this notion that people are going to pull away, or people are not going to want to see the ugly, that they only want to see the happy and the smiling,
yeah.
makes people feel like they should just hide, and feels like, you know, they should just go away. And that doesn't serve anyone, right? That doesn't serve anyone. I mean, I think,
You know, when you said, we were talking about before how we coped, I think a lot of it I've spent in hiding, if I'm going to be really honest. Like, if I'm out, you know, say we have a kiddish and I'll make an effort, or, you know, I managed to pick my daughter up from school, which is something very new for me. Like, people come and stop me. They're so shocked to see me out, that I didn't realize until recently, when I've been trying to push myself more for the sake of my mental health and trying to not fear that pain. And that's something I'm working on. But after 10 years of what I've now realized was probably like hibernating and not going out, and nearly as much as a human needs to.
you know, to be honest with the two of you, I mean, something that I thought about as we were all talking, and we were chatting about wanting to do this live and bringing the two of you here, I kept thinking to myself, like, what happens if it's on a day that you don't feel well? Like, what happens if it's a time where it's just not possible for you? And I didn't say it to the two of you, and I should have, but what I kept thinking to myself is, like, you could, one of you or both of you could say to me, I can't do it today. Like, I just can't make it happen. And that would have been totally fine. Because, like, I think that, you know, look, you know, I thank God, endometriosis is not something that I struggle with, and I don't have a chronic illness. But knowing different aspects of this space, there are times that you plan for something and then you just can't do it. Like, you just can't.
I try to make plans with people only that will understand that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Or not make plans at all.
Yeah,
You know, Sunday I actually went to Prospect Park and I walked there and back. It's about 40 minutes from my there and back. my sister messaged me, hey, we just left our house. We're about 15 minutes. They're about 15-minute walk from me. Are you up for it? And I was like, you know what? I have to get out of the house. I was in a little bit of pain, but my mental health needed to get out and be with nature for a little bit. So I got dressed, put my sneakers on, and I walked. And some of the time I was pushing her stroller because that helped me walk. And other parts, I was walking slowly. But knowing, or when I know I have something,
We like rest.
yeah, it's
I
like,
rest
okay,
today.
today this is my big thing. I have to rest before or after. Early on, I used to have all my appointments as much as possible on one day. I can't do that anymore. Unless they're, let's say, in the same place, a couple blocks away from each other. Each appointment just drains so much of me. Whether it is a more invasive type of appointment like physical therapy or actual testing, or whether it's just something, a consultation where you're just talking. So often you have to start opening up, sharing the background again. And even if it's not a physically draining, invasive appointment, just the talking is so emotionally draining. And I find, for me at least, opens up that medical trauma again. Seeing a new specialist is okay.
The worst.
I'm gonna have to find someone else to see after this because they're not gonna take me seriously. Or is this gonna be, yeah.
We have
Is
to
this
push each other to go and see specialists. We're like, you gotta take the plunge.
Yeah, we do. We really push each other. And unfortunately, sometimes people, even now, people are gaslit and told. I remember someone on the group was told to expect the doctor to not take her seriously. And I got so mad and so passionate about it because one doctor shouldn't, in their way of preparing someone to see a specialist, have to prepare their patient that it is a possibility that they may not be taken seriously.
Horrible.
And
Horrible.
just
A man would never have that problem, though.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Such a good point. Such a good point.
There were emotions flying on the group because some of us were kind of enraged and just mad, and others were like, yeah, this is unfortunately a reality that we live with. And almost when you go to a new doctor, you go to a new practitioner, and you are supported, it's wow.
Yeah, that's when we have like a little celebration.
Yeah. I let my breath out and I just let myself breathe. It's like that breath that you don't realize that you're squeezing in, and you finish an appointment and you're done, and you realize that you've really been like holding your body so tense because you were just so scared going into it.
Yeah. Talk to us now about both of you. Michaela, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think is unique? I mean, both of you mentioned pieces of this before, but what do you think is unique about being a Jewish woman and living in the Jewish community in regard to your diagnosis? I mean, and we obviously touched on some of this already with, the value the Jewish community places on family and the number of children, and the fact that we're constantly having all of these different events, right? On a weekly basis, people often go to synagogue. We have families where, there's birthday parties and there are school events and there are bar mitzvahs and there are, lots of different things, whether you're in the religious community or not. How do you handle these kinds of things? What people say to you about this? Like, how do you handle this?
So firstly, I'm trying to also focus on the positive, which is it's unbelievable how much. And I do a lot of advocacy work for endometriosis in the UK, but most of it's with non-Jewish people. So when I tell them my story, which involves fertility, and I went to Kavisi, which is like Bonnie Island, but in
Okay.
Manchester. So it's a fertility charity, and like I tell them like how much my fertility treatments cost and all the help I got, and these women are shocked, like gobsmacked. They can't believe the help. You know, when I left the hospital after my surgery, and the nurse was like, "You can't pick anything up for 6 weeks. What are you gonna do? Who's gonna feed your kids?" I'm like, "I've got 2 months worth of meal routers, so that's amazing." But on a day-to-day life, it's almost like I feel I don't quite fit in. I had I struggled more from secondary infertility, so I had, after I got married, I had to have my surgery, which helped me fall pregnant. Thank God, she was a miracle. When I found out I was pregnant with my first child, like my specialist was so shocked. He gave me this massive hug. But those years in between, yeah, those were so awkward. But it was like a shock. Like he had been told me like this is never gonna happen. My husband was like, "Get off." Yeah, so but those years in between, the comments that you get, and it's hard enough when you don't know yourself, and then it's hard because I don't know how it works there, but here, if you have one child, you can't get any fertility help on the NHS. And then it's also like if you have one child, the doctors don't seem to understand that, like, but you have had a child, and you know, it's around everywhere. Like my husband's one of 10. There's big families everywhere, and you know, and then I had this child asking for a sibling as well, and it's what's hard is you can feel so blessed for something and still just yearn for the same thing still, and it's hard because there's not many people you can talk to that understand, especially when it comes to secondary infertility. I feel because a lot of us feel bad to talk about it for those who haven't had any children yet. And again, like on this group, which we have, there's quite a few of us that are mums, and we talk about how hard it is being a chronically ill mum, and then we have respect to the ones on the group and who haven't had that opportunity yet, but they also understand, I hope, that we don't have any other mums to talk to, and we all respect each other's boundaries. But it's a really difficult thing, and this is, just now when I had to have the hysterectomy, and emotionally it was so hard for me, and the specialist was like, "But you have 2 children." He genuinely didn't understand, and it's hard because they won't understand, like no one understands, but you're reminded everywhere. It's almost as if you don't fit into this world, to this community, even though you do.
Right. It's like you're straddling both worlds. You're straddling the endometriosis world, I should say even 3 worlds, the endometriosis world, and for you specifically, the secondary infertility world, and the Jewish community, and all of those together. It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah. Leah, how has it been for you?
Difficult. Everywhere you go, you're kind of reminded where you stand. What I have done that has helped me, I spend a lot of time with my neighbors who do have children. So actually, a few months after my miscarriage, I started looking after my landlord's little boy, and I was his babysitter from the age of 7.5 weeks old.
Wow.
Until recently. He's 2.5 now. He's going to have his upshoness soon. And I have to say that we have this incredible connection. I picked him up from preschool a couple weeks ago. His mother was home sick, and he saw me through the door, and he was like, "Oh, my yaya." And he was, so excited to see me. And then on the flip side, you sometimes are like, ouch, this hurts. And as far as the comments go, it's not always even the comments from the community as much as there are some myths surrounding endometriosis. one of the very well-known myths, and doctors throw this at you very often, is just get pregnant.
Which isn't that easy.
Which wouldn't, yeah, number one, it isn't that easy. Endometriosis can affect your egg quality, the implantation of the egg, and different things. Some women who with endometriosis who do get pregnant do find that they do have a slight relief during pregnancy, and then boom, a few months postpartum, and they are absolutely struggling and can't, take care of their child, which was a huge fear of mine.
Which is not a nice thing to go through.
Yeah. And then it's like that feeling for me was incredibly scary, to constantly be told, no, just get pregnant. And also knowing that, the medication I was taking, which was stopping things, was really, really saving me from, being hospitalized, from needing infusions and stuff, because I had been bleeding so much previously. And to that kind of being like, I know I'm taking this because this is helping my health, to being, I really want what the other side can offer. And then another hand coming in and being like, but what if I get so sick afterwards? I couldn't bear still a very, very scary thought for me, the prospect that, I could, or maybe not be able to fully look after a child properly once they're born. It's just very scary. And another myth is just get a hysterectomy. Well, Michaela can tell you that did not help matters. And the whole thing of endometriosis is that it is outside of the uterus. The endometrium is the lining of the uterus, and this is tissue that is very similar to, but isn't the same as, what is inside your uterus, and it is growing outside. People can have it on the outside of their ovaries, on their fallopian tubes.
The organs.
Basically every organ in the pelvic area. It's very commonly found in the cul-de-sac, which is kind of underneath where the uterus is, like kind of like on top of where your pelvic floor muscles kind of start, between the uterus and the rectum, between the bladder and the uterus. All these like different areas that can like really be hidden. And removing the uterus when things aren't actually growing, when the uterus isn't actually the problem, is not going to help. There's still a chance. It's there, but it can help with a sister condition called adenomyosis.
Right. Okay. So I want to, like, both of you have shared a tremendous amount about, your personal struggles, about this diagnosis, what it's meant for you, how you've been able to lead your life and manage it. I want to give people a little bit of, chizuk, strength, a little bit of positivity to sort of lead off, to end off here. And because I think it's really important to say, like, look, we're talking to the two of you now. And while this diagnosis has so many really horrible side effects, consequences, etc., there are definitely things that have helped. I mean, some of you mentioned some of them already, but what are the things that have helped you through the years, both practically speaking and just in general, people in your lives, or kinds of different, things that people have said or done for you? What has helped you to be able to push forward, to keep like trying to be positive on the days when you feel absolutely like dreck? What are some of those things? Michaela, I'm going to come to you.
So I think for me, I guess when I had my daughter, when I was 21 when she was born, and then after that things got really bad, and whenever things got so bad that, and as hard as it is to admit that, it gets to the point where I just don't see a future. If it's ever got so bad that I felt that bad about myself, I've gone and looked at them and realised I can't do anything because I'm here for them, and I have to find a way to push through this. And then that pushed me a lot into my advocacy work and my blogging, and you know, by helping others, they were helping me back. And because I finally had a sense of purpose, I think we can't, and it's so easy for us all to do this, just sink into we are the illness. And for so long I let myself be that, and I lost every part of me, who I was, my friends. And I'm learning to rebuild and to re-love myself, because you have to, as a woman, love yourself. And I'm learning to do that in order to be able to cope every day. I think I had to give myself this sense of purpose of not just allowing myself to willow every day, and which I did for years. And you know, I'll be hypocritical if I said get out of bed and go and do stuff. You know, I spent years bedridden. My husband, there was years that my husband was basically a single father, which I couldn't live with, the guilt. I couldn't breathe with how awful I felt. But I made it through. By now, somebody gave me a really good piece of advice, that even on your worst days, write down 3 things you're grateful for. And this I have done every day. When I went through infertility, when I was in hospital, and even during COVID, I was in the ICU. I couldn't see my kids, and I remember messaging my husband like, I can't do the list today, there is nothing. And even on the worst days, I've wrote down 3 things I've been grateful for. And I think that, going back to as well the Jewish life, I think we have this mentality because we are taught to, you know, to thank God for the good no matter how bad things are. And this sense of community, you know, when I talk to these women who aren't Jewish, and even, you know, the Jewish women who aren't religious can go to these charities. So we to always know that there's a community that has you back. Like, I had to go private for a few surgeries, and people fundraised and take the support. Just take, you know, I was never a taker, and I was a shy person. And I'll tell you, from this, I've learned that I have a voice. You know, the fact that I'm doing it live now. I've been on a few podcasts. A few years ago, I couldn't even share a picture of my face, never mind talk on a camera. You know, I've learned to say, yes, please, like, help. You know, when people offer help, when people offer food, when people offer support, you'll take it, and you see the ones that mean it. And you can't try and be a martyr, because nobody is. And really, we've got to put ourselves first in order to help the people around us be okay. And I wish I would have learned all of this, so I could, you know, or I could go back and tell my younger self this, because it's only the past few months I've even been able to see the world like this. You know, I'm trying to come off my meds, which also affect your mental health, and I'm trying to really turn myself around. But it's that, just, you have to try so hard. And I mean, I've just had a hysterectomy, and I'm gonna have to possibly have my bowels removed as well, which is something I'm trying to avoid. And that's why now I'm stressing it more than ever, because after the hysterectomy, I thought it was over. I was so naive. Like, I've been saying to all the girls, like, I'm so stupid. Like, I left that hospital and I said to the nurse, I'm not going to be coming back here. And now I feel so stupid, because I've had 12 surgeries already. And like, it's I had to accept that I have to learn to somehow, whatever my coping mechanism is, to find it. And people can't judge me, because nobody walks in my shoes, and I'm going to cope as best I can. And I'm going to stop caring about what other people think, because that's not going to help either. And it's just this whole change of attitude you have to have, because it is a different life you're having. So don't put yourself on the same pedestal as a healthy person, because all you'll do is put yourself down every single day. You have to put yourself on a different pedestal.
You're making me cry. You're making me cry. because this is the essence of the work that we do, right? The work that we do is to talk about the pain, because there needs to be a space for that. But just because you talk about the pain, it doesn't mean that you need to stay in the pain. And that when you're able to accept help, and when you're able to embrace community in a way that can lift you up, I mean, and, obviously, everyone has their own perspective on the way, their relationship with God and their emunah, their belief, and their bitachon, like in their, I'm looking for words to translate it, how they believe God controls the world, and the different aspects of theology and that perspective. But I think that there is a tremendous amount of power in what you just said
I actually
about.
said to my husband, sorry, I said today to my husband, without faith, like, how does anybody do this? Because I know that I, hand on heart, would not have been here today without faith, without some belief that so I found out that I either have to have a bowel transplant or a bowel removed. Now, within 24 hours of finding out this news and asking for help online, I had people calling me from all over the world, because that's the power of the community that we have, and that is beautiful. Our lives, and I said to my husband, why isn't it like this anywhere else? And we believe we have to look after our bodies physically and mentally, and we're supposed to be buried with all the organs we have, and it's a massive thing. We value our lives,
Yes.
and our bodies so much more, and it makes the journey so much more emotional. But then it also makes those good times, so you can't, the more, listen, somebody told me that the harder things are, the more you appreciate the good. And I said, I'm happy to just feel everything evenly, because the hard's too hard. But then the good comes, and when I say the hard's too hard, like, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. But then those moments, where I look at my kids and I just think about everything I've done to get here, and I just think that now I understand, like, that's God, and it's just, you gotta have the faith.
Yeah. Leah, your thoughts. How do you do this? How have you been doing this?
My surgery almost